Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We start with the video 4 on selection and evolution. In this video, we're going to be discussing number 1, artificial selection, number 2, molecular comparisons, and then we're going to be talking about the last topic, which is extinction. This, of course, is a video on the biology syllabus of 9700, and it is the A2 syllabus, and this is the chapter on selection and evolution. Now, the first topic that we discuss is artificial selection. Now, basically, artificial selection is always of human benefit, and as you can say, I've said more. I feel it is greed rather than benefit. So, human benefit is at the basic core issue here. So, what do we want? We want high-yielding crops. We want in a certain specified area, because we're talking of crops are grown over a specified area. So we say, okay, how much is the crop yield? How many tons of mangoes did we have in an acre of land, or 2 acres of land, or 5 acres of land, or hectares of land? So high yielding crops. How much did we get the wheat crop? What was the mass of the wheat crop which we obtained in 10 hectares? What was the mass of oranges that we harvested in 10 hectares of an orchard in which we grow oranges? So number 1, high yielding crops. Number 2, we talk of the increased milk yield. So you see, dairy animals, which are very important, because milk is a very important ingredient is being consumed by everybody, everywhere and anywhere. So increased milk yield. Now here in artificial selection, we have to understand humans apply the selection pressure, and then humans choose this because they need to get the benefit or make money on it. So it's human benefit. Now, the first thing that we are going to talk about is 3 points of artificial selection. 1 is selective breeding of dairy cattle. Number 2 is crop improvements. These are the headings under artificial selection, which you must understand it rather than sort of learn anything about it. So the first one is selective breeding of dairy cattle. Number 2 is crop improvements. And number 3 is inbreeding and hybridization in maize. So these are the 3 different topics of the artificial selection which I'm going to talk about. Now, coming to selective breeding of dairy cattle. Now, in dairy cattle, what are the traits that we like? The traits that we like is number 1, docility. Docility means they are docile. Docile means they're easier to control. I think we talk of docility in many other fields as well. So parents would like a docile child, though I do not agree with that. So docility is the able to control the animal. It's not very aggressive. Number 2 is fast growth rates. Number 3 is high milk yields. So we want these 3 features in the dairy animals that we want. If I have a dairy farm, which I actually have, so we prefer those animals which are docile, which are easier to control. Number 2, fast growth rates, and number 3, of course, high milk yield, because if I have a dairy farm, well, I'm going to sell the milk. I'm not going to sell the meat of the animals. Now, what we do is we take individuals with the desired characteristics, and then we breed them, we cross them, we mate them. And then we get the offsprings, and then we repeat this over many generations, and finally we get an animal which has all these 3 features, and it's all for human benefit. So more milk means more money. So selective breeding of dairy cattle, this is what we do in artificial selection. Now coming to the second topic, which is crop improvement. Now, in crop improvement, what do we want? We want a high-yielding wheat crop. You know, wheat is a common cereal which is, well, eaten everywhere in the world. I mean, some people will make bread out of it. Some people will make chapatis or roti out of it. Some will make naans out of it. Some will make a paratha out of it. So, high-yielding wheat crops. Wheat is eaten all over the world in some form or the other. So, we want a high-yielding wheat crop that is more per unit area, more per hectare, more mass of the wheat seed. We don't want the other part of it, the stem. We just want the seeds. Or we want a more gluten in the wheat, which is of course good for making bread. But of course that has resulted in a lot of gluten allergies as well. So This is one of the sad parts of this high gluten wheat that we've been consuming all these years. Then resistance to fungal diseases. You see, plants also develop fungal diseases and their leaves all are destroyed or they just curl up. So the photosynthetic area decreases. And when the photosynthetic area decreases means less glucose, means less food, means less flowers, less fruit. So resistance to fungal diseases, because as the leaves curl up, then they would result in less yield. Then we've developed wheat plants with shorter stems. Why? Because energy would go into developing the seeds. The stems would be short. So number one, it will be easier to harvest. Number two, it will have higher yields. Shorter stems have a major advantages because they're not knocked down by heavy rains. Plus they produce less straw. Because the straw has no value. We cannot use the straw unless you of course have a dairy farm also where you can use the straw to feed the animals. But if you just have a wheat farm or you just have a farm in which you grow plants and you just have the wheat crops, then of course it costs money to dispose of the straw. So shorter stems in a way are beneficial because they're going to help us in increasing the crop yield. Now if you look at the dwarf variety of the wheat which has a short stem, it carries a mutant allele and two reduced height genes, RHT genes. Now these RHT genes code for the DELA proteins. So the DELA, is responsible for gibberellins, so reduced effect of gibberellins on the growth. So we have the dwarf variety of the wheat. Then we talk about the rice crop. Now these are the two main crops. Rice and wheat are the main crops all over the world. And many countries of the world either have majority rice eating countries or they are wheat eating countries. So wheat is consumed and rice is consumed all over the world. Now the yield of rice is reduced by bacterial diseases. And fungal diseases like spots and smuts, these are names of the different fungal diseases. Then there's another which is called rice blast. This is again a fungal disease, and what the researchers have been doing is that they've been developing rice seeds which are resistant to these bacterial and fungal diseases. So if we don't have crops suffering from these diseases, then we have a higher crop yield. And that's again, as I said, artificial selection is all about human benefit. So the farmer is going to make more money because he's going to have increased mass of the rice, which is the crop, the rice product, and then of course he's going to sell it, and he's going to get richer and richer. Now the last topic is inbreeding and hybridization in maize. Now what we find is we've got an inbred A and we've got an inbred B. So there's one here and there's one here. Now the inbred A and the inbred B have now become they are low yielding, and they do not have a lot of fruit. So what we do is we cross the inbred A with the inbred B, and there's slight differences in them, but they're maize crops. And what we find out is that we have a hybrid AB, which is of course now it has more fruit, it is much taller, it has more stem, it has more leaves, and it has more fruit. So we have resulted in increasing the maize crop, the yield in maize crop, by this process of inbreeding and hybridization. Inbreeding means the inbred varieties are very low yielding, but when we cross them and we get a hybrid, now this results in hybrid vigor. Hybrid vigor means the hybrid is much more sturdy, it grows more fast, and of course it has more fruit. So this has resulted in maize crops. So the crop yields have increased, and this has been really remarkable how the crop yields have increased a lot in the last couple of years. The next topic that we do is the molecular comparisons between species. Now the two headings that we're going to talk about is comparing amino acid sequences of proteins. So we're going to compare the hemoglobin in different animals. So amino acid sequences of proteins, is there any difference? Are they closely related or are they not closely related? Then number two, we're going to study comparing the nucleotide sequences of mitochondrial DNA. Please understand that the mitochondrial DNA is very important in the zygote, and the mitochondrial DNA has come from the female gamete. So we're going to be comparing that. We're going to try to understand these two topics. Please, this is more of an understanding rather than learning, but it's a very good understanding of the topic which is needed. Now we come to the molecular comparison between species. The first thing we need to compare is the amino acid sequences of proteins. So we'll compare maybe the hemoglobin in different animals and the sequences of the amino acids in that. You know, the primary structure is the number and sequence of amino acids. So we're going to now study the molecular comparison, and the first thing we need to study is comparing amino acid sequences of proteins. And the second we're going to study is comparing the nucleotide sequences of the mitochondrial DNA. If you remember, the mitochondria is made up of an outer membrane and an inner membrane which is folded, and it has a circular DNA in it, and it has 70S ribosomes in it. So we're going to study the nucleotide sequence. You know, nucleotides are A, T, G, C is the nucleotides, the bases. So adenine, thymine, guanine and cytosine. So the nucleotide sequences of the mitochondrial DNA. Now coming to the first one, the protein that we're going to study is cytochrome C. Now cytochrome C is a protein which is required in an electron transfer chain, and we talk about it in the process of oxidative phosphorylation. So let's look at cytochrome C from three organisms. One, we say the humans, second is mice, and third is rats. Now, strangely, all three of these, when we take a cytochrome C from humans and we take cytochrome C from mice and we take cytochrome C from rats, the strange thing is all three of them have 104 amino acids. So the primary structure is made up of 104 amino acids with a certain sequence. Now the sequences of mice and rats are exactly identical. So there's no difference. They're identical. So that means these are very closely related and they have a common ancestor. But when we look at the human cytochrome C, we see 9 amino acids are different. 9 amino acids are different amongst the 104. So the 9 amino acids are different, but these 9 amino acids have the same type of R groups. Now if you remember, R groups dictate the properties, like will it form a hydrogen bond with another R group? Will it form an ionic bond? Will it form a disulfide bond? So the R groups will dictate the different properties, but when the 9 amino acids that we look at, which are different in humans from the rats and the mice, well, they have the same type of R groups. So that is something which is very interesting, but then the 9 amino acids are different, and that gives us a very good clue that humans are distantly related. But mice and rats, because they have the same sequence of amino acids, so they are closely related and they share a common ancestor. The next topic that we need to discuss is the nucleotide sequence of mitochondrial DNA, and how we're going to compare the nucleotide sequences of mitochondrial DNA. So first let's talk a little bit about the basic biology behind it. Now if you remember, the ovum is the female gamete and it contains a haploid nucleus which contains half the number of chromosomes. Now when a sperm comes, now the sperm, it's only the nucleus which is going to travel in. So this is the male nucleus. So this nucleus is lost, and what we have is now the male nucleus fuses with the female nucleus. Now this of course would be N as well, and this is going to result in the formation of a zygote. Now when you look at the zygote, it receives the mitochondria from the ovum. So the mitochondria are from the ovum. So it is from the female gamete that the mitochondria are present. So the zygote contains the mitochondrial DNA which is from the ovum. Now the mitochondrial DNA is circular DNA. So no change can take place because it's circular, so no crossing over can take place. So the only reason why a change is going to occur is if there is going to be a mutation. So the mitochondrial DNA is from the ovum, from the female gamete. And because a mitochondria has an outer membrane, then an inner membrane, and inside then it's got the matrix. In the matrix you have circular DNA and 70S ribosomes. Now this circular DNA can only change if there is a mutation. Now mitochondrial DNA we find mutates faster than the nuclear DNA, and this is every 35,000 years. Mitochondrial DNA is not protected by histone proteins. The nuclear DNA has histone proteins. Then during oxidative phosphorylation, there are forms of oxygen which are produced when it accepts the electron and the oxygen becomes negatively charged. Now that of course can act as a mutagen. So that is why we say mitochondrial DNA mutates faster than nuclear DNA. Different human populations show differences in their mitochondrial DNA sequences. Now, somehow, as we examine these mitochondrial DNA sequences, it provides evidence of the origin of Homo sapiens, humans, and their subsequent migration. Where did they originate, and then how some migrated and how they moved from one continent to the other. And we finally come to a conclusion that all humans are descendants from one woman, and that woman has been called the mitochondrial Eve, which of course we absolutely believe in. Now, when we study the mitochondrial DNA sequences, the greater the number of differences that we see between two mitochondrial DNA in the sequence of nucleotides, then longer ago those individuals shared a common ancestor. So if we compare, like we do a study on lizards, and we study their mitochondrial DNA and we look at their sequences and we look at the differences. So there are 10 differences, there are 20 differences, there are 30 differences. So if there are 30 differences, then that means longer ago those individuals must have shared a common ancestor. But if there are only 10 differences or only 5 differences or only 2 differences, then that means they shared a common ancestor. So this finishes the molecular comparisons. One was the protein comparison of the protein, the amino acid sequences. The other was the nucleotide sequences of the mitochondrial DNA. And then we come to the last topic, which is extinction. Now the last topic of this chapter is extinction. Now let's talk about extinction. Now as we look at the topic for extinction, we have this very important organization called the International Union for Conservation of Nature, and it's www.iucn.org. And they have a red list, and on that red list are either plants or animals which have a threat of extinction. And the reason is that their numbers have become so low, and we call this the endangered species. That their numbers have become so low that they cannot remain the same numbers by normal reproductive cycles. So they are now have been put on the red list, which means that they might in the years to come, in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, be totally not be seen on the face of this earth. Now, what we need to do is to somehow prevent this. Of course, we talk about that in another chapter, but let's just discuss the topic of extinction. The major reasons for extinction are, number one, habitat loss. And the reason why habitat loss means we're cutting down trees for urbanization, for building roads, for building cities, for building factories, for building houses. So when you're cutting down trees and forests, well, you are finishing the habitat of a large number of organisms. Number two, we hunt animals for sport or for food. Number three, climate change. Now climate change is going to result again in habitat loss, because basically every food chain starts with a producer. So if climate change is going to result in less plants means less trees, less grasslands. So that is going to result in many animals becoming extinct because you've removed their food source. And number 4 is competition for food, competition for space. So all these results in extinction. This completes the chapter on selection and evolution. We covered topics of artificial selection, number 2 molecular comparison of protein sequences and nucleotide sequence of mitochondrial DNA, and the third we covered the topic of extinction. So I hope this chapter now becomes a little easier for you to understand, and thank you.